Hey everyone, Dave from Blue Rose Games here with another episode of $20 budget decks. Today's deck, Hexproof Auras. This is the budget version of a modern deck that actually can win a tournament. If you surprise your opponents with this one, you can actually possibly win this in a regular tournament. It's that good. So let's go ahead and get into the deck. Alright, so Hexproof Auras. The main point of Hexproof Auras is to form what we call Megatron. Basically, stick one creature on the board that has hexproof. Essentially, hexproof is just your opponent can't see them. They can block them, but they really can't do anything else to them. So the point is to stick one, make it huge, as big as you can, attack in. Sounds simple. It's pretty simple. It's actually one of the decks that most people hate playing against because there's no real interaction with your opponent. Hexproof has been touted as one of the worst abilities that Wizards ever created for Magic, and I gotta be honest with you, I love it, but of course I play it. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we got in here. So your one drop has to be Glade Cover Scout. Remember, this is budget. I do not even own any other one drop hexproof creatures, unfortunately. This deck's going to be fleshed out with a couple of more expensive hexproof creatures just because it's a budget deck and I don't really have a whole lot of other options. So this is the most important one, though. Your whole point of this deck is to drop this turn one and just win. So we got a play set of those in there. Just because I needed other hexproof creatures in case those die. The first option was a newer card. It's Jade Guardian. It's not bad if you have multiples because you can actually put a +1/+1 counter on another one. It's just because I've actually made this deck 3 times for cons and they go almost as fast as the infinite mana ones. It's just a really good deck and it's a really good budget deck for those of you who don't want to sit there and spend thousands and thousands. I mean, once you eliminate out the fetch lands, this really is a cheap deck to play. So got that. One of my, when I play Magic on duels of Planeswalkers and Magic duels, this card is so hard to beat because there's no way to touch it, and it's got a big body. I mean, it's a 3/3, so that's version of hexproof creature that we can go with, or we can go with the Rubbleback Rhino. Like I said, I just wanted to make sure that there were plenty of hexproof creatures in here so that if one dies, you can start building Megatron again. Alright, so let's start with the pieces of Megatron. I've explained Ethereal Armor before, but I'll go ahead and do it again. Ethereal Armor is, in my eyes, the best white aura for this kind of effect ever. It literally builds upon itself. So if you have 2 of these out, it just starts to get crazy. So for each enchantment, it can be an aura, it can be a regular enchantment, but for each enchantment you control, it gets +1/+1. So you can get these your Megatron, pretty beefy pretty quickly, especially since there's only one to cast. So of course you got a play set of those in there. The next piece is Hyena Umbra. It's basically an Ethereal Armor, but only for +1/+1. Again, it's an enchantment. You kind of want more enchantments on the board than anything else. And it has Totem Armor. So in case somebody tries to can board wipe and kill your Megatron, you can Totem Armor. That way your Megatron stays in play and they basically just lose. Unflinching Courage. Remember, we're green-white. So +2/+2, trample, and lifelink. It's not always, a benefit to having different enchantments in here, especially when you're using Ethereal Armor. You just want it as cheap as possible. But the reason for Unflinching Courage is the trample. You really want to try to get that damage through because they're going to keep trying to chump block it. Armadillo Cloak is essentially an older version of Unflinching Courage. When you're going to upgrade the deck, if you want to put it in a modern tournament, remember to take out the Armadillo Cloaks, try to find yourself some more Unflinching Courages. It's exactly the same card. The only difference is when it was printed and the name. Armored Ascension, +1/+1, and Flying. It's +1/+1 for each planes. It's not going to get as big as in a mono white weenie deck. It's not going to make your creature that much bigger, but it's the flying that we're looking for. We're looking for that evasion, looking for that ability to just get the damage through no matter what. Holy Mantle is kind of the way for you to make it unblockable, essentially. There are some equipments out there that do that, but remember, we're looking to pile on the enchantments so that we can make the ethereal armor bigger on the creature. So I went with Holy Mantle. Protection from creatures, essentially what that means is not only can they not be touched by your opponent, they can't be blocked either. So Holy Mantle is pretty much, once you get that on one of your guys, it's pretty much game over the bigger you can make it. So the defensive suite of enchantments, I went with Bounden Silence. It's basically just an enchantment version of a way to make it so that they can't touch you, and it builds onto your ethereal armor. Luminous Bond, same thing. And the obligatory Pacifism. I always put Pacifisms in every white deck because it's just cheap and efficient. It essentially nullifies... It could nullify the biggest creature on the board. It's just efficient. Here's where the tech comes in. You're playing an enchantment deck. If for some reason he has bigger creatures than you, somehow I don't see that happening, because when you're forming Megatron, it never gets to be a small creature. Sphere of Safety is your safety net, so to speak. So it says creatures can't attack you or a Planeswalker control unless their controller pays X for each of those creatures, and X is equal to the number of enchantments you control. That's where the whole theme of white and Hexproof Auras goes. Is it's all about enchantments. So if they can't attack you, and they can't see you, and they can't block your creature, that's why a lot of people don't really like the Hexproof mechanic and the Hexproof Auras deck, because it's pretty unfair. It's not really something that people can interact with, and they don't really like not being able to interact with their opponents. So I put a couple of those in there in case you're having a problem. Now, normally I don't like to put non-enchantments in my Hexproof Auras decks, but I ran across this in my collection. I thought, well, it pretty much is the same thing as the ethereal armor, only it's an equipment. So I said, you know what? It's essentially like having an extra ethereal armor in your deck. So I went with it and threw it in there. Oath of the Ancient Wood is more green version of enchantment love. It helps make your creatures bigger, so I threw that in there as well. And the Mesa Enchantress I put in there for green and white cannot draw cards usually. It's not easy for them. I figured if it's an enchantment deck, why not throw a Mesa Enchantress in there? Helps you draw cards. It's the only creature in the deck that does not have hexproof, so it's the only thing your opponents can target. So they may just kill it quickly, but if it does survive for some reason, it can help you draw the cards you need to get to quicker. For the special card, I put an Eidolon of Blossoms. It's another version of the Mesa Enchantress, so to speak. So whenever it enters the battlefield, or another enchantment enters the battlefield, you can draw a card. It's itself an enchantment and a creature. So it's essentially the most perfect card you could find for a Hexproof Auras deck. So I went and I had a couple special foil editions as a card. I went ahead and threw that in there as a special edition foil. Again, we are a two-color deck, so the lands go as, Forest and Plains, and then my normal suite of Evolving Wilds, so that you can go ahead and grab some lands out of the deck and make your draws better. And then a play set of Selesnya Guild Gates. I've told you before I like to use the gates. I have a good amount of them just because Ravnik has been printed a lot. I have a couple of special edition ones in here. I got I believe this is a Spanish version. So that's the Hexproof Auras deck. Again, people don't really like playing against it. It's one of the most popular decks I make. I have to make it for every con because it sells usually second or third. So that's your Hexproof Auras. As usual, any comments or questions, go ahead and put them below. Anything else, just contact me. Like my video, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. There will be more coming. And thanks, and have a good day.